Creative Business. I am Ed Shems, and this guy is James Stowe.
Hi
I thought
there.
you were going to say your name.
I'm sorry, I didn't say my name.
Okay. I'm an
so
illustrator, graphic designer, and I'm BFF of the Graphic Artists Guild. And James, you are?
I'm an illustrator, graphic designer, arts educator, and I was, until very recently, the Western rep for the Graphic Artists Guild.
That's right. But you also run the Freelance Fandango, which is every
That's
week.
right. I'm also the host for a weekly discussion group hosted by the Guild that talks to and about creative freelance professionals every week.
We'll probably talk more about that a little later. What I really want to get into, one of the things that James and I wanted to talk about today are trade practices, best practices. But we got just a fantastic comment on Facebook from someone named Karen. And the question they asked was about a project that they have for a client where the client wants X, but Karen is concerned that her price will come in a little too high, and they want to make sure that they don't price themselves out of the job. So
a dilemma we all face. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Who hasn't faced that problem? How much should I ask for? Are they gonna walk after this? So there are many different ways that we can kind of deal with this, and some of it has to do with your personality, with your comfort level, with talking with a client. So James, I know that sometimes you will ask your client what their budget might be, right from the start, right?
Absolutely, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad practice, especially when it comes to sole clients, like non-corporate or non-company clients, smaller clients. They generally come to you with a budget. They know exactly what they want. Whereas I think with larger clients, they have a little bit more leeway. Do
you find that those corporate clients sometimes hold back on telling you their price in case?
Absolutely. I would say that's across the board. Like just because you ask a client what their budget is doesn't necessarily say the client is comfortable sharing that information. But I wouldn't use that as a that's not a roadblock enough for me to not ask that question. It's a useful question, and it helps frame it before we get into like longer conversations about cost and scope.
So I give a talk called Ready, Set, Freelance with my creative partner, Justin Perricone. And one of the things we talk about is finding a way to kind of work it into the conversation. Like, oh, by the way, what is your budget on this project? So there are different ways to kind of find your comfort level to just kind of ask the question. Because I remember when I kind of started out, I felt like I got to the end of the conversation where they were telling me, their brief. I got to the end of the conversation. I'm like, well, I don't really feel comfortable asking them price now because, boy, have I bonded with them. And now I'm their friend. So therefore, they probably don't expect to have to pay me. And it took me a while. I know that's crazy. But it took me a while to realize that they know that they have to pay me. That I'm going to create something that will probably help their business make money. So once you start to realize what your thinking problems are, then you start to kind of figure out what's going to work for you. By the way, hi, Roger over at LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us again. So once you have that figured out, there are some ways that you can add it into the conversation. You can segue into it. Oh, great. Now I have all, one example is, great. Now I know your schedule. I know what you need from me, what the deliverables are. Okay, so now's a good time for us to talk about price. Hi, Daniela. Now's a good time for us to talk about whether or not you have a budget. And then you let once you're able to do that, you can let the conversation flow in that direction. Leanne, hello.
You said two things really stand out to me. And the first thing is you said comfort level, which is super important when we're talking, especially when we're talking about money to a client. You need to understand where your comfort level is, and you need to begin to understand where your client's comfort level is. And that comes to the second thing that that you said that really stands out to me, which is building that bond. Especially as a freelancer, it's super important for you to gain an understanding of your client and what your client needs and what your client is comfortable with across the board. I often tell my clients that one of the things that I do for them is I try to I create the vision that's in their head. So the more I understand what they want and what they need, the better it is that I can prepare the work that they want. But that goes also in line when we are beginning these initial conversations about costs, about scope. And I want to stress in this conversation, it is very important for you as a creative professional to price the work that you're doing and the work that you provide. And those are two different things. In a way that makes you comfortable. Whatever your comfort level is at the point. If you're just starting out, you need clients, your comfort level might be really low. If you're well established, if you have a regular clientele, if you've planned your quarters out, your comfort level might be way higher when it comes to walking away from something. So you need to understand what that comfort level is. And then you need to make sure that you're getting paid for your effort because you're the worker. And then you need to get paid for your output, the service that you're providing. So you need to factor both those things in. Often we forget about the working part. We forget about the labor. We focus instead on the product. So it's important for you to remember that you are not only the provider of content, but you are the labor that is producing that content. And both those things are super important for you to get paid for. I wanted to use a different word than paid, but the basic idea is there. So it is important for you to know where your comfort level is on your minimum, where you can go to, because it's a negotiation, right? And it's important to understand that negotiation. One of the things that I like about the handbook is that it provides averages when it comes to what the value of certain services are. So you can use that as a general guide, and then place yourself and your market into that average somewhere, right? I have a minimum. I know exactly where I walk away from a table, right? If they're not providing this much money, I'm not dealing with it. And I understand that is really hard for some people to do, right?
Or impossible.
Right. Or impossible. So if they can't meet my minimum, I tend to try to get creative with solutions. And if they can't budge on the price, or they're worried about the price, then I try to provide them, like, maybe we can build installment plans for payment. So then they're not paying the full price, and they can split that stuff up. Well, there are creative ways to negotiate payments and price. Like maybe we reduce scope, or maybe we deal with other things. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to negotiate that isn't just the price point.
Right, because one of the things that we talk about is that come up with your fair price. And if they can't meet that price, you don't lower the price. Instead, you lower the deliverables. So in other words, and this is one of the things that I talked about in my response on Facebook to Karen. This is in the Graphic Artists Guild's Facebook page. We actually have two versions of today's Mind Your Creative Business, and that's the old one that had the wrong image, so we didn't use that one. Anyway, if anyone wants to see my full response, was I talked about how you have to take something away. You have to take away time. Add time to it so that you don't have to deliver as quickly. Or you take away sketches. So you may do 3 rounds of sketches. Now instead, for a lower price, you do 2 rounds. The number of years for them to license the work, or where they can license the work. But so actually, before we jump into the next part, I want to share my screen real fast. See if this works. This is a slide of the conversation that is part of Ready, Set, Freelance. You can watch this on the Guild's webinar archive. If you're a member, you get it for free. If not, you have to pay. I also give this talk to RISD. It's we try to cover everything in freelancing. It's called Ready Set Freelance. And so here are, if you want to take a screenshot, go ahead. So here are some ways to broach, to work into the conversation, the money talk. And that's so one of the things that I also talked about in my response to Karen is creating tiers. And so this is your price. Your price is right here. Let's put you in the middle. You're the middle. You're the price that you come up with that's fair to you at the time, the schedule that they need, for the rights that they need, for the geographical area that they need. And this can be graphic design. This can be illustration. This can even be web design. This can be interior. This can be many.
Anytime we're negotiating with a client, regardless of the creative field, this applies.
There you go. So your price is right here. This is your price right in the middle there. And this is your fair price. This is where you want to be. But also you thought, well, but what they're not thinking about is that if they might want to put this on a billboard. Now that's not part of the scope that they asked for, but this would make an amazing billboard. I think that they would actually really like this. So you can create another tier that says, okay, so to add major marketing to this, the rights to major marketing, then here's a higher tier. So this is your original one. Here's a higher tier for more money. But then if you're worried, as Karen was, that your price is going to be beyond their means, that's when you create the lower tier. I don't have 3 hands to show you, but 1, 2, 3. So the lower tier is, okay, if you need it cheaper, then here are your options: fewer sketches, longer timeline, fewer rights, all that kind of stuff. So don't immediately disregard the price that you think is the right price. Find ways to give your client an out before they ask for an out.
Yeah, I think there doesn't necessarily need to be transparency on your end either. What I liked the comment, Monica on LinkedIn said that they have a regular price, and then they can offer, based on relationships with clients, a VIP price for those clients, right? Your VIP price might be your regular price, but the transparency part, that's where that comes in. I generally, when I am approached by a client, I build a project fee. Like, I work with the scope of the project. And I wish I had a whiteboard behind me, because I would be writing down furiously right now. But I generally have, and I use this very often for myself. I have a spreadsheet where I take the common projects that I am asked for, built on scope. So basic projects on one side, scope moving out, and prices, general prices for each of those types of products. So I know for myself what I like to get paid for each type of thing that I do. Right. So it's very easy for me then, when a client goes, well, what would you charge for this? I consult my spreadsheet. I look there. I determine what they need, how it fits into that, and I give them a general estimate, right? And then as we begin to negotiate, that estimate changes. It adjusts based on their needs, based on my needs. But that's a good starting point. So if you don't know for yourself and your business what your general charges are, I would recommend, as a starting point, work there. Think about the work that you normally do and create some kind of a guide for you so that you know what you like to get paid for that. Go ahead.
Now, how do you come up with those numbers? Well, you can use this book to come up with a range. So, this is based on a survey where people who've been in the business for 30, 40 years and people who've been in the businesses for fewer years get surveyed. So you'll find a span there. So it's really helpful to see that span, but you're not sure sometimes where you are in there. So that's why, if you're part of a community of artists, that's where you kind of tap people who do similar work to you, and you talk about,
Especially locally.
especially
Locally
locally,
is important.
where you tap them for the kinds of prices that they get for their work. And very often, I'll tell you right now, very often you'll find people are definitely undercharging. I see this all the time, and I'm like, yes, and I feel better about my prices, but I still know that I'm undercharging. And I just want you to know that it's you're not going to find the perfect, person with the perfect numbers. And it's really important that you do some work here. And I'll tell you why. There are some projects that I get that are very similar from year to year to year, different companies that are very similar. And what I typically do is I'll look at what I charged the previous client, and that's what I'll charge the next client or for the next project. But if I priced it incorrectly for that first client, I'm basing all my numbers on the wrong pricing. So once you feel confident that you've got the right pricing, then life is so much easier. You know that you don't have to think about it too much. You know that, just as James was saying, you know where you should be for certain projects, and there should be like a little increase every year too, hopefully.
Oh yeah, I audit that spreadsheet about once a quarter. And that's
Oh,
too much.
can we
That's
just
too
watch?
much.
Can
But
we just
I
watch?
just look at it just to make sure everything is right. About because I plan per quarter. When it comes to freelance work, I plan per quarter.
Okay.
So I hopefully know what, like, I'm in the third quarter. I don't know. I'm also a teacher, so I'm on summer break right now. So my scheduling brain is not as engaged as it normally is. But I'm on the third quarter, so I should know what my fourth quarter looks like right now, so I don't have any surprises. um, and I before we go on, because we're about halfway through our time today, I want to address Mike Weber on LinkedIn. Wanted to talk about business plans and processes when it comes to the handbook. And I don't want to forget his question, because I think it's an important one,
Great
and
one.
I think it leads into the conversation we're having right now. Because everything we're talking about when it comes to pricing and setting your goals for pricing feeds into that idea of creating a business plan for yourself and knowing where you want to go and what you want to be, like, in the future. Like, what is your 1 year plan? What is your 5 year plan? What is your 10 year plan? What do you hope to get? What are your minimums? What do you need to survive? All these things are super important. And I think the handbook can certainly be a really excellent resource for that. I remember when I was first introduced way back, like 30 years ago, to the handbook in college. That's how I was introduced to it. I was introduced to it as a resource for building the idea of a business. Like, what are the best practices that I want to do? And we talked about best practices already, or at least the fact that we should be talking about best practices. And that goes into that business plan idea. So it is a wonderful resource. The handbook is a wonderful resource for what people like you do in situations, what they charge in situations, and it is regularly updated. So it's a wonderful resource in that regard. It helped me out when I was first starting my career.
Yeah.
And it helps me out to this day. I've got it right in front of me right now.
I was introduced to it really close to the beginning of my career, at the same time that I was introduced to an artist friend who's still a friend of mine, Lauren Scheuer. If you're out there, hi. And I used her the same way I used the book. At the time I was getting into doing watercolor editorial work, but I was so far behind. And I said to her, "Can you just tell me what watercolors you have that you mostly use?" And she gave me a list of all the colors that she typically has on her palette to just kind of get me started. So that, because to me, it was just such a hurdle. It was such a mountain to like be to just figure out what colors I should even start with. That's just how my brain works. So she gave me those colors, and I was able to just kind of jump in and start painting because I felt that confidence. And that's why that's the same way I use the book. There are parts of it that tell you just how to think something through or what you should be thinking about as you start your business or as you run your business, or things you never even thought about, and as well. It's in there, and it's a really good guide. And from there, we're not trying to preach that you have to have this book only. There are some great
Well, it's just great
tutorials out there,
resource.
but sometimes you don't know what you need your ducks lined up to figure out where you need to dive in. That's a horrible analogy. And once you
Well, I wouldn't want to dive into a duck, so it's a pretty good analogy.
well,
Like you want to know where the ducks aren't.
that's right. That's right.
I'm sorry. But I absolutely agree with you that finding a community is important. And nowadays they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. When I was starting out, my community was relatively limited. Now I run a community now, right? So there's opportunities to find mentors and working professionals within your community. And all of that is super important to your development. I want to, if we don't mind going to chat, Daniela has asked a question about getting new clients. And after that question said something that chills me to the bone that I really want to address. That where they are from, clients are used to asking for the first job for free to see your work. I don't know where you are from, but that is not a business practice I recommend. You have a portfolio. The portfolio shows your work, right? If a client is demanding you to do work for free to see if you work, no, you get paid to work. Like you're not in the business of giving away free work. Your portfolio provides them the examples of the work that you do.
So let me give you an example. Probably or possibly what they're doing is they don't know how to hire an illustrator, and they want a certain look, and they don't see it in your work. That is a huge red flag. You need to be taking work that you're comfortable with and that you will want to share. Well, typically that you'll want to share in your portfolio. Of course, there will be times when you take a job that you can do that will be in a style that you're not a fan of. But you want to make sure that you're taking work that is in your wheelhouse, and that's your portfolio. So if they don't see it in your portfolio, then you probably don't want to be doing that job, period.
Yeah, no, that's the best advice. If you have a portfolio, the portfolio shows the work that you want, right? You're working for yourself to do the work that you want. If a client goes, well, I'm not seeing the work that I want in your portfolio, it's important for them to find the work they want too. You don't need to be the solution for everyone. You need to be solution for the clients that appreciate your work. Now, often we're like, oh, but we need to do all the jobs that come to us. Mm-hmm. And I understand when you're starting out, that's an important thing, right? When I started out, I wanted to be the chameleon. I wanted to be the artist that could do any style under the sun. Anybody that comes to me, I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to do that work. And I found that wasn't benefiting me as much as it was benefiting the clients. The clients want a look. So they're going to go to people who can produce that look. In me producing all kinds of looks, I am not making myself a specialized resource that a client will go, oh, well, I remember he did this, so I'm going to go back to them again. You get in the mindset that I am everybody's solution, so everyone's going to come to me. But in reality, you are deluding yourself to a point where no one remembers you, other than being a solution to their immediate problem when they couldn't find what they needed. And I'm being harsh there, but I think it's super important, especially what Ed said. You are creating a portfolio to receive the work that you want, because that's the work that you like to do.
Yeah.
That's the work you're good at doing. Do that work and get paid for it, most importantly.
There's so much that I agree with there. I don't even know where to go at this point. But you will find that there are many people who don't know any. So in my case and in James' case, illustrators. So there are many people who don't know any illustrators, and so they'll immediately come to us for jobs that we just aren't the right fit for. Or I'll be suspicious that I'm not the right fit for it. And so I'll ask them a lot of questions, and I'll ask them, like, if it's a children's book if it's a children's book about wacky wild kids, I'm there. That's me. You found the right guy. But if it's a children's book about childhood depression, I will actually ask them and help them think through what would actually be more appropriate. And I'll even help them kind of think through how to go to the library or to the bookstore and just look for similar books, see what style is there, and that's where they should work. And if they want to come back to me afterwards and ask for my help to find those artists or similar artists, I'm a little. My wife says I'm a little too happy to help people on stuff.
We all are. We're all way too happy to help.
We don't get paid for, but I feel very passionately about making sure that people get that their personal projects come through, that they get to see it through and see it happen. And that's the case often for self-publishing. There are many people who come to me and say that they want to do a book, and I say, well, do you want to go to a publisher or do you want to self-publish? Oh, self-publish. Okay, well, and then I give them the reality of it, of how much it would cost for my work or any illustrator's work, and then for printing, and then how are you going to distribute and all that kind of stuff. And then I say, okay, so now you might, and based on what they say, I'll say, then it looks like you need a publisher. So you need to go down a certain road to work out your story, make sure it's perfect before you find an agent, before you write a cover letter, all that kind of stuff. There's so much to think about, and a lot of people just kind of jump in. And those are sometimes the people who reach out to you first and say, hey, let's start this project. No thanks. And actually, can I segue just for a moment?
Sure.
Or did you have something really important that you wanted to say right at this moment?
I just wanted to agree with Leanne that, and to the point that I actually have relationships with other illustrators and graphic designers, that if I pass on a project, I will recommend the client seek those other illustrators, graphic designers, and then I have a finder's fee for that. They will, like, we help each other out. You don't need to be in competition with other people in your area. You can work with those other people to sustain a much better business for everyone involved.
That's right. And Daniela, maybe you're right. Maybe you do need to have a more honed portfolio. When I got out of school, I was told, Ed, you have to have one style so that everyone knows what they're going to get from you. And I was like, no, I love doing cartoony stuff. I love doing scratch board. No, actually, I love doing scratch board, though. And then I also love doing adult cross-hatching illustrations. And like, if you go to my Instagram feed, you'll see I'm all over the place, unfortunately, because I'm a little ADD. But what I ended up doing when I graduated was I created Ed, Fred, Ned, which you can see. Oh, you can't see. Which you can see as my name. And everywhere I'm Ed, Fred, Ned, because Ed was children's stuff, Fred was adult stuff, and Ned was my scratchboard stuff.
I have always wondered why you did that.
I no longer do that. I'm more concentrating on my kid stuff, but Ed is my kid stuff. Fred is my more adult editorial stuff, and Ned is my graphic design. So I'm still kind of all over the place, but that might be a way for you to continue doing a few different styles. But let me just tell you right now, don't. Just go down one road, find your way. Keep drawing
Do
in that.
what's comfortable for you. Try that. Do what's
No.
comfortable for you.
Martha wants to know, James,
Generally, without getting into nuances with different professionals, it's generally at 10%. So whatever they make of the project, they'll give me 10% if I'm the one that steered them to it.
What if they do multiple projects together?
It's just the first. Like it's not like every time you do a work for this client I gave you, you need to pay me. I'm not your agent, right? It's just like a handshake. Like I introduced you to this client. This is the project that you're working on for this client. I introduced you to it. Here's like the agreed, and this is an agreement we have before, obviously.
Yeah.
Because it's meant to help. It's not meant to. I'm not trying to. We're not trying to be predatory. With our. You should really have a good relationship with the other local designers or illustrators or photographers in your area, because you all are working in the same pool with the same clients. So you want to have the best relationship with them. You want to have the best relationship with clients. You want to have a good reputation, and you want to support your community. Supporting your community is huge, which is why I constantly am like, find a community, like establish those connections.
Yeah. So that's a good segue for me here, because next week, so the New England region, on behalf of the whole guild, has been putting together a show off and tell, which has been going really great. We do it once a month. And last show off and tell, I made the suggestion, because we've become, there's some people who show up every month, and it's been wonderful. And that's the community that we're building, where we can show up and ask each other questions. And in the midst of asking questions last month, I said, I have a friend who has been a background animator for The Simpsons for over almost 30 years. And because of the writer's strike, he's had to pivot suddenly and create his own side business while he's been laid off, waiting for the strike to end. And so he's going to be joining us next week at Show Off and Tell. And I just thought I'd give a little insider information here, because we only have a certain number of seats, and it's free, by the way. And so, if you want to scan that right there, it should take you right to the page to sign up for next week's Show Off and Tell. But also, we were just talking about we were just talking about so many things, but I have some insider information about the next webinar also. Oh, sorry, I should leave it up a little longer. About one of the next webinars in November. I can't give any information away yet, but I'm working with a well-known author, illustrator, about doing a conversation about how to pitch and how to create pitches, and to make sure that you're getting the right kind of agent, and how to just be an entrepreneur and figuring out, like, don't just wait for the jobs.
I want to go to that.
Yeah, you should. Don't just wait for the jobs to come to you. Make the new project that then gets sold to the publisher. So that's going to be in November, the webinar in November. There are some great ones coming up as well. You can go to the Guild's website. Do I have a link to that? I don't, right here. Where you can find out more. Go check on the calendar page and find out more. This is the book that we've been talking about, the Handbook. And then also, as James said earlier, he as well as Bill Morris, run Freelance Fandango every Sunday, where you all talk about the industry, and is it mostly illustrators, or does it run the?
It's we welcome any kind of creative freelance professional from any stage in your career, whether you're just starting out, whether you've been doing work in the industry for decades, whatever. And we talk about pretty much anything. There's no pre-programmed content. We just we do portfolio reviews. We talk about industry practices. Sometimes we just talk about the stuff we're watching while we're working at home every week,
I love
right?
it.
So it's just a good community to have. Freelance Fandango is it's a Zoom meeting 2 hours every Sunday morning. It's my personal church, my freelance church.
And to quote Hamlet, to kind of paraphrase Hamlet, get thee to a community.
There you go. Ooh, that's good.
Oh no,
I need to make that into a T-shirt.
We have run over time.
Yeah, way over.
This has been, I have really enjoyed this conversation. And folks, we do this every month. Our next one is actually August 15. We've moved it from the 16th to the 15th. We hope you'll join us. You can watch old episodes, previous episodes on LinkedIn, or just by following links on some of this social media, the Mind Your Creative Business hashtag. And we really appreciate all the comments, all the chats we got here today. And
absolutely,
it was so nice to be here. Freelance Fandango is not on LinkedIn. It's a Zoom event. So thank you so much for joining us. And James, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
Have a good day, everyone.